The Argent Dawn hadn't been spaceworthy in 3 systems, but Chase Maxwell figured that was what made her perfect. He sat in the pilot's seat, fingers dancing across the navigation console, while his best friend Brock Landers sprawled in the co-pilot's chair with his boots propped on the dashboard. The ship rattled like a bag of spare parts every time they hit sublight, but that kind of authentic desperation was exactly what sold the con. "You think they bought it?" Brock asked, tossing a protein cube into the air and catching it in his mouth. Chase glanced at the rear monitor where their latest marks, a pair of Grelvan merchants, were loading what they believed to be genuine Antarian whiskey into their cargo hold. Hook, line, and sinker. By the time they realize it's colored grain alcohol, we'll be halfway to the outer reach. "That's my boy." Brock grinned and reached over to slap Chase's shoulder. "How much did we clear?" 8,000 credits. "Split 2 ways?" "Split 2 ways," Chase confirmed. Brock let out a low whistle. "Not bad for a Tuesday." "What's next on the agenda?" Chase pulled up a data chip from his jacket pocket and slid it into the console. A holographic projection flickered to life, displaying a rotating image of an ornate medallion covered in swirling alien script. "This is the Tears of Archon, supposedly a religious artifact from the Valesi homeworld. Word is, a collector named Torven Gresk is willing to pay 200,000 credits for it." Brock's eyes widened. 200,000? For a piece of jewelry? "It's not just jewelry. The Valesi believe it grants good fortune." Chase expanded the image, highlighting the intricate metalwork. "Thing is, the real Tears of Archon is sitting in a museum on Valesi Prime, locked down tighter than a Cranox's wallet." "So we're stealing it?" "No," Chase smiled. "We're making a fake and selling it to Gresk before he figures out it's counterfeit." Brock sat up straighter, his boots hitting the floor with a thud. "I like where this is going. But how do we fake something this detailed? We'd need a master forger." "Already got one lined up. Remember Finn Rackham, the guy who owes you for that Sabek game on New Terra? That's the one. He'll do the work for 20,000, which leaves us 90 each after expenses." Brock rubbed his hands together. "When do we start?" Chase checked the navigation readout. "We dock at Threshold Station in 6 hours. Finn's workshop is in the lower sectors. We pick up the fake, meet Gresk on his luxury yacht, make the exchange, and we're rich." "What could possibly go wrong?" "Don't say that," Chase muttered. "You know what happens when you say that." The Argent Dawn shuddered as they entered Threshold Station's traffic pattern, joining the queue of vessels waiting for docking clearance. Chase guided the ship through the designated approach vector, while Brock handled the communication with station control. "Argent Dawn, you're cleared for Bay 7 Delta," the controller's voice crackled through the speakers. "Copy that, 7 Delta," Brock replied, switching off the comm. He turned to Chase. "You ever wonder if we should try going straight? Maybe start a legitimate shipping company or something?" Chase shot him a look. "That last about 5 minutes before you got bored and tried to smuggle Tarkelian spice in a cargo container." "Fair point." They touched down in the docking bay with a metallic groan that suggested the landing gear was held together by prayer and duct tape. Chase secured the systems, while Brock grabbed their go-bags from the storage locker. Threshold Station sprawled like a mechanical tumor in the space between sectors, a haven for anyone who wanted to avoid questions from law enforcement. The corridors smelled of recycled air and questionable food vendors, while overhead lights flickered in that universal sign of deferred maintenance. Chase led the way through the crowds, weaving between Grelvan traders, human prospectors, and a Skrell merchant arguing loudly with a Tarkelian over shipping rates. They descended 3 levels via a rust-stained lift, emerging into the lower sectors where the lighting grew dimmer and the crowd more suspicious. Finn Rackham's workshop occupied a cramped corner unit that looked like it had been assembled from scavenged parts. Chase knocked twice, paused, then knocked 3 more times, the agreed-upon signal. The door slid open to reveal a wiry human with oil-stained fingers and magnification goggles pushed up on his forehead. "Chase Maxwell," Finn said, grinning. "Heard you might be coming around." "Finn. Do you got it? Do I got it? Of course I got it." Finn stepped aside, gesturing them into the workshop. "Come see for yourself." The interior was chaos, workbenches covered in tools, half-finished projects scattered across every surface, and a faint smell of solder in the air. Finn moved to a secure cabinet in the back, entering a code before pulling out a velvet-lined case. Inside lay a perfect replica of the Tears of Archon. Brock leaned in close, examining the medallion. "Damn, Finn, that's impressive work." "I don't do anything halfway," Finn said proudly. The metal composition matches the original specs. The engravings are accurate down to the micron. And I even aged it to look like it's been sitting in a temple for 3 centuries. Chase picked up the medallion, feeling its weight in his palm. This'll pass inspection? Gresk would need an advanced metallurgical lab to spot the difference, and even then he'd have to know what he's looking for. Finn crossed his arms. You got my payment? Chase nodded to Brock, who pulled out a credit chip and handed it over. Finn scanned it with a portable reader, then smiled. Pleasure doing business with you gentlemen. Try not to get yourselves killed. We'll do our best, Chase said, pocketing the medallion. They left Finn's workshop and made their way back toward the upper levels, where Gresk's yacht was docked in one of the premium bays. The vessel was a sleek Valtheran-class pleasure craft, all polished chrome and tinted viewports, the kind of ship that screamed wealth and poor taste in equal measure. A security guard stopped them at the entrance ramp. State your business. Chase Maxwell and Brock Landers, Chase said smoothly. We have an appointment with Mr. Gresk. The guard consulted a data pad, then nodded curtly. Follow me. They were led through plush corridors decorated with expensive art pieces that probably came from questionable sources. The guard deposited them in a lavish meeting room where Torven Gresk waited. A heavy-set Grelvan with blue-green scales and eyes that gleamed with calculated intelligence. Gresk rose from his seat, spreading his arms wide. Gentlemen, I trust you brought what I requested. Chase set the case on the table and opened it, revealing the medallion. The Tears of Archon, as promised. Gresk's eyes lit up as he leaned forward, studying the artifact with barely concealed greed. He produced a jeweler's loupe and examined the engravings closely. Remarkable, how did you acquire this? Trade secret, Brock said with a charming smile. Let's just say we have connections on Valesi Prime. Gresk set down the loupe and nodded slowly. I must verify its authenticity, of course. My expert is on the way. Chase's stomach tightened. Expert? A formality, I assure you. Gresk gestured to a pair of chairs. Please sit. This won't take long. Chase and Brock exchanged a glance before sitting down. This wasn't part of the plan. Most collectors like Gresk relied on their own knowledge or took the seller's word as part of the underworld code. Bringing in an expert meant either Gresk was more cautious than they'd anticipated, or someone had tipped him off. The door hissed open, and a tall Valesi female entered, her silver skin catching the light as she moved with fluid grace. She wore traditional robes marked with the symbols of the scholarly caste, and her dark eyes held an unsettling depth of knowledge. This is Scholar Navara, Gresk said. She specializes in religious artifacts of her people. Navara approached the table, her gaze fixed on the medallion. She picked it up with reverent care, turning it over in her hands while murmuring something in her native language. Then she produced a small scanning device and ran it over the surface. Chase kept his expression neutral, but his mind was racing. Finn had sworn the replica would pass inspection, but that was before they knew a Valesi expert would be examining it. If Navara detected the fraud, things were about to get very complicated very quickly. The scholar's expression remained unreadable as she continued her examination. Finally, she set down both the medallion and the scanner, turning to face Gresk. It is a masterful forgery, she said calmly. The room went silent. Gresk's friendly demeanor evaporated. Forgery, the craftsmanship is excellent, but the resonance is wrong. Navara gestured to the scanner. Authentic pieces from the Temple of Archon carry a specific molecular signature from the sacred oils used in their consecration. This has none. Gresk's hand moved toward his jacket, and suddenly Chase found himself staring down the barrel of a plasma pistol. 2 security guards materialized from concealed doors, weapons drawn. I should have known better than to trust human con artists, Gresk snarled. Did you really think you could fool me? Brock raised his hands slowly. Now let's all stay calm and talk this through. The time for talking is over. Gresk's finger tightened on the trigger. You've wasted my time and insulted my intelligence. I think I'll sell you to the Cranox labor camps. They pay well for human workers. Chase's mind raced through their options. The guards blocked the main exit, and Gresk had them dead to rights with a pistol. They needed a distraction, something to shift the balance. His eyes fell on the case that had held the medallion. Before you shoot us, Chase said carefully, you might want to know about the real Tears of Archon. Gresk's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? We didn't come here empty-handed. The forgery was just a test to see if you had the resources to verify authenticity. Chase leaned back in his chair, projecting confidence he didn't feel. We wanted to make sure we weren't wasting the genuine article on someone who couldn't appreciate it. Navara studied him intently. You claim to possess the true tears of Archon. Not here, obviously. We're not stupid enough to bring something that valuable into a meeting without insurance. Chase nodded toward Brock. My partner has the location of the real artifact stored in a secure data vault. If anything happens to us, that information gets encrypted and scattered across a dozen servers. You'll never find it. It was a complete bluff, but Chase delivered it with the kind of casual certainty that sold the best cons. He watched Gresk's expression shift from fury to calculation. You expect me to believe that? Gresk demanded. Believe what you want, but Scholar Navarra here just confirmed we have access to someone who can create a perfect replica. Why would we bother with that unless we'd studied the original? Chase stood slowly, keeping his movements non-threatening. Here's what I propose. Let us go, and we'll arrange a meeting to show you the genuine article. You can verify it with every test in existence. If it's real, you pay us 300,000 credits. If it's fake, you can hunt us down and do whatever you want. Brock caught on to Chase's play. And we'll throw in the forgery for free. Might be worth something to a collector as a curiosity piece. Navarra spoke up before Gresk could respond. If they truly have access to the tears of Archon, it would be foolish to eliminate them now. The artifact is priceless to my people. Gresk lowered his weapon slightly, doubt creeping into his expression. Where is it? Safe. And it stays that way until we have guarantees. Chase picked up the case, closing it with a decisive snap. We'll contact you within 48 hours with the location for the exchange. Bring Scholar Navarra to verify authenticity. Bring your credits, and come alone except for her any sign of an ambush and the deal's off. For a long moment, Gresk said nothing. Then he holstered his pistol and waved the guards back. 48 hours. Don't make me regret this. Chase and Brock walked out of the yacht with measured steps, neither of them speaking until they were well clear of the docking bay. Only when they reached a crowded marketplace did Brock finally exhale. Please tell me you have a plan, he said quietly. Working on it? We just promised to deliver an artifact we don't have to a very angry crime lord who will definitely kill us when we don't deliver. I'm aware of the situation. They ducked into a bar, claiming a corner booth where they could talk without being overheard. Chase ordered 2 drinks from a serving droid, then leaned across the table. Okay, here's what we do, he said. We have 48 hours. In that time, we need to actually steal the real tears of Archon from the museum on Valesi Prime. Brock stared at him. Have you lost your mind? That museum has security systems designed by the best minds in 3 sectors. Breaking in is impossible. Not impossible. Just really difficult. Chase pulled out his data pad and began searching for schematics. We need a crew. Can't do this with just the 2 of us. Who'd be crazy enough to help us with a job like this? Chase smiled. I know just the people. Over the next 6 hours, they assembled a team. First was Riley Park, a security systems expert who owed Chase a favor from a job on New Terra. Then came Diego Vargas, a Tarkelian translator who could pass for Valesi in low light if you squinted. Finally, they recruited Natasha Tash Kowalski, a pilot with a ship fast enough to outrun most patrol vessels. They gathered in a rented storage unit on Threshold Station, crowded around a holographic display showing the museum's layout. Riley highlighted the security systems, pointing out laser grids, motion sensors, and automated defense turrets. This is suicide, Tash said flatly. They've got triple redundancy on every system, armed guards rotating every 30 minutes, and an AI that monitors for any unusual activity. That's why we're not going in through the front, Chase explained. He zoomed in on a section of the museum's lower level. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs underneath the building. It's not heavily monitored because it's considered inaccessible. You'd need to cut through 3 feet of reinforced durasteel to reach it. And how do we cut through 3 feet of durasteel without setting off every alarm in the sector? Diego asked. Brock grinned. Thermite charges, slow burn, minimal vibration. We cut a hole big enough to slip through. Riley disables the internal sensors and we walk right in. Riley shook her head. Even if we get inside, the Tears of Archon is kept in a climate-controlled vault with biometric locks and a release mechanism. You'd need a Valesi handprint and retinal scan to open it. That's where Diego comes in, Chase said. You've got contacts in the Valesi community, right? Diego nodded slowly. I know a custodian who works at the museum. She might be willing to provide a biometric sample if the price is right. Get it done. We'll pay whatever she asks. And the release mechanism, Riley pressed. We bypass it. Chase pulled up another schematic. The vault's power supply runs through a junction box in the basement. If we cut the power at exactly the right moment, the failsafe opens the vault to prevent the artifact from being trapped inside during an emergency. Tash crossed her arms. So we cut power, grab the artifact, and run like hell, pretty much. This is the worst plan I've ever heard. Got a better one? Tash considered for a moment, then sighed. When do we leave? They departed Threshold Station 18 hours later, crammed into Tash's ship, a modified Corsair-class raider she'd christened the Shooting Star. The vessel lived up to its reputation, covering the distance to Valesi Prime in record time. Valesi Prime gleamed like a sapphire in the viewport, its oceans reflecting the light of twin suns. The planet was heavily monitored, but Tash had forged credentials that identified them as a diplomatic transport. They received clearance to land at a commercial spaceport on the outskirts of the capital city. Diego met them at the spaceport 6 hours later, a small vial clutched in his hand. Got the biometric sample, cost me 10,000 credits. Worth every penny, Chase said, taking the vial. Inside was a gel containing both skin cells and fluid from the custodian's retina, enough to fool most biometric scanners. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Riley assembled the thermite charges, while Brock studied the guard rotation patterns. Chase reviewed the vault schematics until he could navigate them blindfolded. Tash remained with the ship, ready for a quick extraction if things went sideways. At midnight local time, they moved into position. The maintenance tunnel entrance was located in an abandoned industrial district, hidden behind a rusty security fence that looked like it hadn't been maintained in years. Riley made short work of the lock, and they descended into darkness. The tunnel was exactly as unpleasant as Chase had anticipated, cramped, damp, and smelling of mold and stagnant water. They navigated by headlamp, counting their steps to reach the correct position beneath the museum. Riley placed the thermite charges in a careful pattern, then connected the detonators to a remote trigger. Everyone stepped back. This is going to get hot. The charges ignited with a hiss, burning through the durasteel with an intensity that forced them to look away. Smoke filled the tunnel as the metal began to glow and melt. After 20 agonizing minutes, Riley cut the charges and examined her work. We've got a hole. Not pretty, but functional. They climbed through one at a time, emerging in a storage room filled with cleaning supplies and maintenance equipment. Riley pulled out a portable scanner and swept for sensors. We're clean for now. The museum's security grid doesn't extend into the maintenance areas. She pointed toward a door. Main gallery is through there. Once we cross that threshold, we're on the clock. Chase checked his watch. Guards change in 12 minutes. That's our window. They moved through the corridors like shadows, Riley disabling sensors as they went. The museum was eerily quiet at night, with only emergency lighting to guide their path. Priceless artifacts lined the walls, but Chase kept his focus on the prize. The vault room was located in the center of the building, accessible through a reinforced door that required both a keycard and biometric verification. Riley produced a cloned keycard while Diego prepared the stolen biometric sample. "Cross your fingers," Diego muttered, pressing the gel against the scanner. The lock cycled through its verification sequence, and for a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft chime, the door unlocked. They were in. The vault itself was a work of art. A transparent cylinder filled with inert gas, the tears of Archon suspended in the center on an invisible magnetic field. Up close, the medallion was even more beautiful than the hollows had suggested, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the light. "Riley, kill the power," Chase ordered. Riley sprinted back toward the junction box they'd identified earlier, while Chase and Diego positioned themselves near the vault. Brock kept watch on the corridor, his hand resting on the stun baton at his belt. The lights flickered once, twice, then went dark as Riley cut the main power supply. Emergency systems kicked in immediately, bathing the room in red light. The vault's failsafe triggered exactly as predicted, the magnetic field collapsing and dropping the medallion into Chase's waiting hands. "Got it. Move," alarms began blaring as they ran back toward the maintenance tunnel. The museum's security AI had detected the power failure and was activating all emergency protocols. Automated doors began sealing throughout the building. and Chase could hear the heavy footfalls of security personnel converging on their location. They reached the storage room just as guards rounded the corner behind them. Brock tossed a smoke grenade, filling the corridor with thick gray clouds. Riley went through the hole first, followed by Diego. Chase shoved Brock toward the opening. "Go, not without you." "I'm right behind you." Brock dropped through the hole and Chase followed, the medallion clutched tight against his chest. They ran through the maintenance tunnel as shouts echoed behind them, their headlamps bouncing wildly off the walls. They burst out of the tunnel entrance to find Tash waiting with the shooting star hovering a few feet off the ground, her landing ramp already lowered. They piled aboard without breaking stride, and Tash had them airborne before the ramp had fully retracted. "Security forces are scrambling fighters," Tash called from the cockpit. "Hold on." The shooting star punched through the atmosphere with Tash's hands flying across the controls. 3 patrol ships gave chase, firing warning shots that streaked past the viewports. "Weapons are locked onto us," Diego reported from the sensor station. "Not for long." Tash executed a barrel roll that sent everyone grabbing for handholds, then dove back toward the planet's surface. The patrol ships followed, but at the last possible second, Tash pulled up hard and activated the jump drive. Reality stretched and twisted as they entered hyperspace, leaving Velocity Prime and their pursuers far behind. Chase sat on the floor of the cargo hold, his heart still racing, and carefully examined the tiers of Archon. In his hands, he held an artifact worth a fortune, stolen from one of the most secure facilities in the sector. Brock dropped down beside him, breathing hard. "We actually did it. Never doubted us for a second." "Liar." They shared a grin. Riley, Diego, and Tash gathered around as Chase divided the payment they'd taken from the ship's operating fund. 20,000 each for the crew members, with the understanding that their share would increase once they sold the artifact to Gresk. "Pleasure working with you gentlemen," Riley said, pocketing her credits. "Call me if you need another impossible job done." The shooting star dropped them off at a neutral station in the outer reach, where they transferred back to the Argent Dawn. Tash and the others departed with promises to stay in touch, leaving Chase and Brock alone with their prize. "Now comes the hard part," Brock said. "Convincing Gresk to pay up without killing us." Chase was already working on that problem. He'd sent a coded message to Gresk's ship with coordinates for the exchange, a remote asteroid field that offered plenty of escape routes if things went wrong. They'd arrive early, scout the location, and maintain the upper hand. The meeting was set for 36 hours after they'd stolen the artifact, giving them time to prepare. Chase and Brock spent those hours running simulations, checking their weapons, and planning every possible contingency. When Gresk's yacht appeared on their sensors, Chase took a deep breath and opened a communication channel. "Mr. Gresk." "Right on time. I hope you haven't wasted my time again, Mr. Maxwell. See for yourself, we're transmitting our coordinates. Come alone with Scholar Navarra as agreed." They met on a small asteroid with enough gravity to walk comfortably. Chase stood at the designated spot with the medallion case in hand, Brock at his side. Gresk's shuttle landed 100 meters away, and the Grelvan emerged with Navarra. The scholar's eyes widened when Chase opened the case to reveal the genuine tears of Archon. She approached slowly, her movements filled with reverence. This time, when she ran her tests, her expression transformed into one of wonder. "It is authentic," she whispered. "The molecular signature is perfect. This is truly the tears of Archon." Gresk's greedy smile returned. "Excellent. Here are your credits." He gestured to a guard who'd remained in the shuttle who brought forward a secure case. Chase checked the contents, 300,000 credits exactly as promised. He nodded to Brock, who transferred the case with the medallion to Navarra's outstretched hands. The scholar cradled the artifact like a child, tears forming in her silver eyes. "Thank you. You have returned something precious to my people." "Just business," Chase said, though something in her gratitude made him feel unexpectedly uncomfortable. Gresk took the medallion from Navarra, his expression triumphant. "A pleasure doing business with you gentlemen. I trust our paths won't cross again." "That depends on what kind of deals you're offering," Brock said with a grin. They parted ways, Gresk's shuttle departing in one direction while Chase and Brock returned to the Argent Dawn. Only when they were safely in hyperspace did they allow themselves to celebrate. Brock cracked open a bottle of genuine Antarian whiskey, the real stuff this time, and poured 2 generous glasses. "To the best con men in the universe." "To friendship," Chase countered, raising his glass. and to never doing anything that stupid again. Where's the fun in that? They drank, the whiskey burning pleasantly on the way down. Chase leaned back in his seat, watching the stars streak past outside the viewport. 150,000 credits each sat in their accounts, more money than they'd seen in months of running smaller cons. You know what we should do? Brock said thoughtfully. What's that? Take a vacation, somewhere nice, maybe one of those resort planets where they don't ask questions. Chase considered it. That's not the worst idea you've ever had. High praise coming from you. Don't let it go to your head. They spent the next hour planning their vacation, arguing good-naturedly about destinations and activities. The Argent Dawn rattled along through hyperspace, carrying them toward their next adventure. 3 days later, they arrived at Paradise Station, an orbital resort that catered to people with more money than sense. Chase booked them a luxury suite overlooking the station's central atrium, complete with artificial waterfalls and exotic plant life. They spent their days sampling expensive food, gambling at high-stakes card games, and generally enjoying the fruits of their labor. It was the closest thing to legitimate relaxation either of them had experienced in years. On their 5th night at the station, Chase was nursing a drink at the bar when a news broadcast caught his attention. The screen showed footage of the Valesi Museum, along with a report about the daring theft of the Tears of Archon. Authorities are baffled by the sophisticated operation, the newscaster reported. However, in a surprising development, an anonymous donor has returned the artifact to the Valesi people, along with a substantial donation to the museum's security fund. Chase nearly spit out his drink. He pulled out his data pad and checked the secure account where Gresk had transferred their payment. The 300,000 credits were gone, replaced by a message in elegant script. Consider this a lesson in the true value of cultural artifacts. The Tears of Archon has been returned to its rightful home. Your payment has been donated to various charities in your names. Perhaps you'll think twice before stealing from temples. Navara Brock appeared at his shoulder, reading over the message. She conned us. She absolutely did. We got played by a scholar. Appears that way. They stood in silence for a moment, processing what had happened. Then, against all odds, Chase started laughing. Brock joined in, and soon they were both doubled over, drawing curious looks from other patrons. We deserved that, Chase managed between laughs. Completely deserved it, Brock agreed. When they finally caught their breath, Chase raised his glass. To Scholar Navarra, who taught us that we're not always the smartest people in the room. To getting outplayed, Brock added, clinking his glass against Chase's. They finished their drinks and headed back to their suite, already plotting their next scheme. The credits were gone, but they still had each other, their ship, and more importantly, the knowledge that somewhere in the universe, a master con artist had beaten them at their own game. It was, Chase reflected, exactly the kind of challenge that made life interesting. The Argent Dawn departed Paradise Station the following morning, her hull still rattling but her crew in good spirits. Chase and Brock sat in the cockpit, reviewing potential jobs on the long-range scanner. What about this one? Brock suggested, highlighting a listing. Transport contract to the Meridian Cluster. Legitimate work, decent pay. Chase made a face. Legitimate, where's the challenge in that? Just thought I'd suggest it. Appreciate the thought, but no. Chase scrolled through more listings. Here's something interesting. A Cranox merchant needs someone to acquire a shipment of Tarkelian spice from a competitor. Offers 30,000 for successful delivery. Now you're talking. They set course for the Cranox homeworld, the stars stretching into familiar lines as they jumped to hyperspace. Whatever came next, they'd face it together, two best friends against the universe, always looking for the next big score. And if they occasionally got outsmarted by brilliant scholars, well, that just kept things from getting boring. The Argent Dawn flew on into the black, carrying its crew toward whatever adventures waited in the vast expanse of space. Chase Maxwell and Brock Landers, con men, troublemakers, and brothers in all but blood, ready to take on whatever the universe threw at them. Together, always together.